Welcome to the fourth episode of The Racing Report. My name is Rob Peeters, and I am your host during this fabulous half hour where we talk about all things auto racing. On today's show, we're going to be recapping the NASCAR weekend in Charlotte at the Charlotte Roval. It was a playoff cut race, so an elimination race in both the NASCAR Xfinity Series and the Cup Series. So we'll be talking about that later on in the show. And then we'll also be talking about the Bathurst 1000. I guess an okay race, but in general, we had a pretty fun battle to the end, I guess. And then some really crazy stuff happened after the race that we'll talk about. And then we've also got a certain manufacturer returning to Formula One, I guess you could say. We'll talk about all of that here and more on today's show. But first, before we jump into the news, I'd like to remind you all that if you like this show, if you want to support this show, feel free to follow me on social media. I can be found at RPEETERS33. That's very simple. I mean, you would think it would be simple, but you know, it's two E's and one B, just in case you're having trouble finding me. So, not sure that you are, but hey, I appreciate the support no matter what. So let's go ahead and jump right on into today's show because we've got a pretty big pack of news to discuss. So number one, we're going to be talking about, like I said, that manufacturers kind of return to Formula One. Well, I guess Toyota Gazoo Racing has announced that they will return to Formula One as a technical partner with the Haas F1 team. And that partnership is actually already going to begin this weekend at the Circuit of the Americas in Austin, Texas. And so that's pretty big news, but here's the thing that's most important to note is that Toyota has ruled out returning as a power unit supplier. So they will not power the Haas F1 cars. They're still going to be powered by Ferrari engines, but there's going to be a technical partnership there, and it's very interesting. It's kind of the releases when they came out were a lot of just word jargon, technical business jargon, I guess, but the main gist of it is the two are going to basically share technical information with each other and with each other's racing groups. So I imagine this is a way for Toyota to maybe work on their hypercar program, maybe, I don't know, and then maybe for Toyota's hypercar program to maybe bring in some success to Haas F1 team. Definitely anything could happen. I'm curious to see where it goes. I would like to see them return as an engine manufacturer, but again, they've seemingly ruled that out for the near future. So, but that is the biggest F1 news, and now we'll move on into some IndyCar news because we do have some, I guess, a little bit of a bummer IndyCar news to report. But Hy-Vee is apparently ending their sponsorship of the Rahal Letterman Lanigan number 45 car. So they will not return to fund that car. And in fact, they're not going to be sponsoring any other races except for Iowa. So they kind of helped out and they sponsored the Milwaukee Twin races this year, but they're not going to be doing that next year. And Milwaukee only goes down to one race next year anyway. So some interesting news, but they are going to, I guess, focus more on their budget when it comes to that Iowa weekend, because I guess that's a big success for them. That's been a big moneymaker for them. So they're going to do their best and see if they can, maybe maximize some profits, but still remain in the sport. But either way, it's a big gut punch to Rahal Letterman Lanigan, which definitely is now needing sponsorship if they're going to even have a third car. They've got Graham Rahal, they've got Louis Foster confirmed for next year, but we don't know who's going to be in the third car. I would personally like to see Rinus VeeKay, but I don't know. It's all dependent on sponsorship. That's what Bobby Rahal says. So, but then the other big news is this is more in the Indy Next world. Hailie Deegan has announced that she will join HMD Motorsports next year in the Indy Next series. So we talked about that a little bit, like in the first show that we did about Hailie Deegan running a race actually this weekend in the Formula Regional Americas series. She's going to be running that race. That'll be her first single-seater experience, and she's already tested again. She's tested an Indy Next car, and now she's going to be racing this weekend in an open wheeler. So a big change. She's come from a dirt track and a stock car background, and now she's going to be tackling pavement open wheelers. So we'll see how that goes. Definitely hoping for the best for Hailie, but hey, man, it's not easy to make that adjustment. It is not easy to make that switch. Just ask Jimmy Johnson, I tell you what. So Interesting news on that front. But now we'll move on into some IMSA news because this was pretty big. Meyer Shank Racing announced their lineup for next year. They're going to enter 2 cars powered by Acura in the GTP category. And the first car is going to be piloted by Tom Blomqvist and Colin Brown. Ironically, both of those guys raced the first couple of IndyCar races this year. But they're going to be racing at Meyer Shank full-time next year in the GTP series. But then they're going to have another car. So that was the lineup of the number 60. The 60 is going to be Blomqvist and Brown. But then they're going to have car number 93 as well. And that's going to be piloted by Renger van der Zand and Nick Yaloli. Nick Yaloli, if I could pronounce his name right. So they're going to pilot that second car. And honestly, this is a stacked lineup if you're Meyer Shank. I mean, Tom Blomqvist and Colin Brown are 2 really, really talented race car drivers. We've seen, at least with Colin Brown, and I guess to a lesser extent Tom Blomqvist, that they can also they have extensive prowess in the world of open wheel racing. But again, it was very interesting how Tom Blomqvist ended up getting this ride. He was supposed to run the whole season with IndyCar, and after the Indy 500, when he crashed in the first turn, that kind of changed, and there was a lot of rumors that the IndyCar deal was just kind of a holdover until this could be announced, and now we have it announced. Now we know who's going to drive the 2 Acuras for Meyer Shank next year. Now let's move on to some supercars news, because this is really really weird. And if you're familiar with supercars and you kind of understand the workings of Erebus, earlier this year, Brody Kostecki did not start the season with the team. He had a falling out with the team. He did not like the team. His mental health was not doing very well, and he sat out, the first couple rounds. And then he came back, and now he won the Bathurst 1000, which we'll talk about later on in the show. But now Erebus has apparently, something weird has happened again. So he wins the Bathurst 1000, Brody Kostecki and Todd Hazelwood, by the way. They win the Bathurst 1000, and then apparently we find out later during the celebrations that an Erebus engineer was attacked. So, the police come in, they do their investigations, and they discover, after looking at the security camera footage, that this engineer that was allegedly attacked actually just hit himself in the face, fell down, and then walked up and out of the camera frame. I mean, I know Erebus is kind of weird and sketchy, but I really don't know what's going on here. And the fact that they escalated it to the police, I don't know. I hope the guy's doing okay. I hope that he's not going through some personal issues that kind of caused him to hit himself in the face. But either way, some strange, and that's really the biggest supercars news that's been going on since Bathurst. That's the thing. That's the thing that everybody's talking about. So, but now we'll move on to some NASCAR news, because this is the biggest part. So apparently NASCAR and IMSA are in discussions to hold a joint weekend, something the 2 series haven't formally scheduled since 2014 at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Now, they did have some joint races at the Charlotte Roval in 2020, but that wasn't scheduled. That was more due to COVID. So apparently, and remember, for full transparency, let's not remember, NASCAR owns IMSA, basically. They write the checks. They're the parent company of IMSA. But they're still kind of run independently from one another. But apparently the 2 are just sitting down over coffee and discussing that they are thinking about holding a joined race. So it'd be kind of cool to see what kind of conjoined race weekend that they would hold. Where would it be? It'd be very interesting to see where that goes about. But as we move on into the next piece of news here, this was very interesting too. This followed the Charlotte Roval weekend. According to the Associated Press, NASCAR is aware of intellectual property having been reportedly given to an unnamed team by a Joe Gibbs Racing engineer. So the engineer had apparently been exploring options with other teams as the season draws to a close. So I guess he was looking for a new job, and other teams talked with the AP, I imagine, and confirmed that, hey, this person, yes, they did interview here. And I guess NASCAR acknowledged and it confirmed to the AP that it has heard that one team with no cars in the playoffs paid the engineer in cash in exchange for setup information. I'm not going to say it. You didn't hear it from me. there are a lot of drivers and team members. You just do a little bit of digging out there on the good old social media web. It could be Richard Childress Racing. The team really did pick up after the Olympic break, and a lot of people are kind of pointing to that. Even Ty Gibbs apparently said something about it. Again, you didn't hear that from me. You didn't hear that from me, but that's the rumor that's going around right now. And then some driver news. We'll talk about some driver news here real quick. Chad Fincham is going to return to the NASCAR Cup Series and Motorsports Business Management in the number 66 Ford next weekend at the Homestead Miami Speedway. He's going to have sponsorship from Greenlight Performance Products and American Airs Inc., not the airline. American Airs Inc. It's something completely different. And then Taylor Gray has apparently been hired to drive the number 54 Toyota for Joe Gibbs Racing next year in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. So some big developments there. So now Joe Gibbs Racing, I guess, is going to have – we got Brandon Jones. Brandon Jones going back to Joe Gibbs Racing. And then you'll have Taylor Gray. And will there be a fourth car? Will there be a third car? I don't know. We'll find out. And then this was interesting. And then Tyler Allen, he is the current crew chief of the number 20 car in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. He's going to crew chief with Taylor Gray next year. And then this was kind of interesting, and this kind of, I guess, is a bit of a spoiler, but Hendrick Motorsports announced that they will not appeal Alex Bowman's penalty, because remember, he was disqualified at the end of the Charlotte Roval race for his car not making minimum weight. And apparently, according to Jeff Gordon, I guess they just cut it too close with the minimum weight. There was some theories that Alex Bowman ran over one of the turtle curbs, and maybe a chunk of tungsten or something flew off the car, and that might have caused the car to be underweight. But no, actually, Hendrick Motorsports' Jeff Gordon said, no, it was kind of actually on us. We've got to own this. And that's a real big shame because, again, and we'll talk about this when we come back from a break, but Bowman was solidly in the playoffs. He had won a stage that day, and he was killing it. He was one of the most consistent drivers this playoffs. And now he's not even advancing into the round of 8 because of a mistake by the team, something he really had no control over. So we'll monitor that here in a little bit. But then the last piece of news before we take a break here, according to Adam Stern at the Sports Business Journal, the CW is apparently exploring the idea of having their announcers call races remotely beginning next year. Now, that's very controversial because Fox Sports does kind of the same thing with their truck race broadcasts, and a lot of people do not like that. I personally think that the broadcast quality suffers quite a bit, and there's been some drivers and other broadcasters that have kind of come out and said, no, we're against this. We need to be sending people to the actual track, and this is also a common occurrence in other sports too. We've seen football games be called from a studio before, basketball games as well. But again, I think it takes something away from the experience of watching the race on TV or at the game or anything. You know, a basketball game covered remotely is not as enjoyable to watch as a basketball game where you know the announcers are courtside. And it's essentially the same thing in motorsports. If you know that the announcers are watching and seeing the whole track in addition to having the monitors and all this stuff, it kind of gives it more authenticity. And to kind of take that away, I'm not so sure I like that. But definitely something to be keeping an eye on as we move into next season with the new broadcast deals and everything. So we have to take a break real quick. But hey, we're going to be right back because we're going to talk about everything that happened this week. And we're going to talk about Cup Series. We're going to talk about the Xfinity Series. We're going to talk about Bathurst. We're going to talk about Super Formula. We're going to talk about the Petite Le Mans. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with the Racing Report with Rob Peeters. All right, welcome back. This is the second half of the Racing Report. We're coming back. We're going to talk about the NASCAR Cup Series weekend at the Roval. Kyle Larson dominated that race and then said he's going to Cabo to chill now on the next couple of days. So Kyle Larson hopefully enjoying Cabo right now, but hopefully by the time you're watching this, he's on his way back. He's getting ready to go to Las Vegas. But hey, man, it was a Sunday drive for him. Easy pickings. Guy was already basically locked into the next round of the chase. No big deal. But again, that biggest story was Alex Bowman being knocked out of the playoffs because of something he didn't do. I mean, he drove the perfect race. He drove a race that would have easily locked him into the second round of the round of 8 in the playoffs. And because the team just played it too close to the minimum weight and they failed post-race inspection, they were disqualified. And now Alex Bowman, who was, I think, 6th in the playoffs, he was seeded 6th in the round of 8, is now out. He's 9th. Crazy shakeups. Joey Logano is in, who really, I don't think Joey Logano has had all that good of a playoffs. But now he has a legitimate chance to get another even year championship. Seriously, look it up. It's like a whole thing. People have been pointing out Joey Logano always wins in the even years. But that's, I mean, again, not much to really talk about with the Roval. Just, it's a next gen race on a road course. Not to say that I don't love the Roval. I love the Roval, but I don't know if I liked the new changes that they came with it. Like I talked about last week, they were going to change the last sector of the infield section, and I think it's set up for what we saw here in the Xfinity race. And first of all, the Xfinity Series race, I have to just get this off the table. If you missed the Xfinity Series race, I think you did the right thing, because it was a good race. It was a fantastic race. It was really, really good up until the very last second, because Parker Kligerman, who's trying to win his first Xfinity race. Okay, he's won a Truck Series race, but it's been, like 7 years since he's won that, right? But he's trying to win his first Xfinity Series race. He's already announced that he's not going to return to full-time Xfinity Series racing next year. And he goes out and he's got the lead. He's coming to the white flag. And as he's coming through the final banked turn at Charlotte, like right as he's entering it, he comes out of the chicane, the backstretch chicane, and he goes down the backstretch, and he's entering that, and then all of a sudden Leland Honeyman crashes. He goes right underneath a tire barrier, and NASCAR kind of waits. They wait to throw the yellow. Like, TV shows Leland Honeyman under there, and they wait about 15 seconds before they throw the yellow. And then they throw the yellow right as Parker Kligerman is taking the white flag. And Parker Kligerman and everybody else thinks, okay, that's the race. He took the white flag. That's it. All right. The race is over, right? But no. NASCAR goes back and says, no, we actually threw the yellow right as you crossed the start-finish line. And the caution light was on, and because the caution light was on, it negates the white flag. So they're saying Parker Kligerman was like right there on the start-finish line when the caution came out. They go into overtime. His tires are gone. Sam Mayer wins. Sam Mayer gets himself into the playoffs when he was dead last. He was dead last in the playoffs in the round of 8, or going into the round of 8. He was dead last. And now he won the race, and now he jumps up into the first when Parker Kligerman would have advanced had he won that race. And so a lot of people, including myself, were kind of just upset because it's like, I think race control kind of manipulated the finish. They were not really the finish, but they manipulated the outcome of the championship. By doing this, they kind of manipulated the outcome of the championship, because had they just said, okay, yeah, Parker Kligerman, he took the yellow flag, he took the white flag, the race is over, totally different playoffs. Completely different playoffs. Once the overtime restart goes into effect, gone. And it's very frustrating. It's very frustrating as a NASCAR fan. It's another example of NASCAR's kind of inconsistency with their own style of officiating, and it's going to be something that we're going to have to monitor in the future. Now we'll talk about the Bathurst 1000. Not really a whole ton to talk about. It was a good race. Don't get me wrong. I enjoyed it. But one safety car, which is weird because usually Bathurst averages around 6-ish safety cars per. Again, this is an 161 race for 1,000 kilometers. I mean, this is a long race. This is an endurance race. This is a race that took like 3-4 hours to finish. So for only 3 cautions to happen, I think a lot of people kind of probably fell asleep. But, I mean, the last 20 laps, 20, 30 laps, the Brock Feeney versus Brody Kostecki battle was pretty good. But it was very clear that Kostecki had the advantage. And then, of course, it was just the heartbreak for Cooper Murray, who had started 18th and had moved his way all the way into the 7th position with co-driver Craig Lowndes, who's, if you're familiar with supercars, you know who Craig Lowndes is, multi-time champion. And he had such a great race going until he was penalized for an improper safety car procedure, and he had to do a drive-through penalty, and that just completely killed his race. And it's just so disappointing because that kid is a very fast driver, has a very bright future ahead of him, and getting to co-drive with someone like that, I'm jealous. Craig Lowndes, man, if I was co-driver with Craig Lowndes, I'd be all in on myself. But not really much of a change either in the championship standings either. Now we'll move on to the Super Formula. Show Suboi. It was the Show Suboi show. If you're familiar with Super Formula, you know this guy. He's a very, very talented race car driver. Very, very talented. Swept both weekends and took the championship lead. No other way to say it. Dude had an incredible wet race weekend. But hey, Kamui Kobayashi scored his first podium in race 1. The Saturday race. He scored his first podium since 2015. So Kamui Kobayashi, who we all know is a great driver. He's won 24 Hours of Le Mans. He's won WEC championships. He's raced in Formula One. Very talented driver. He's raced in NASCAR even. But he's got his first podium in Super Formula in his home racing series since 2015. So good for him. And then we'll talk about the Petit Le Mans real quick. A fantastic race again. Loved it. Cadillac Racing or Chip Ganassi Cadillac Racing basically going out on top. That's their swan song. That's kind of the end of the program after this year. That's their swan song. They went out on top. We had the champion be crowned in the Penske Porsche. Just in general, another great weekend of racing for the the Petit Le Mans. I love the Petit Le Mans. It's always a great thing to watch, and it was kind of hard to keep up between the Petit Le Mans and the Bathurst 1000 when they kind of overlapped. But what are you going to do? It's not the worst thing to happen to a race fan. All right, we have to take another break, and this is going to be our final break of the show. And when we come back, we're going to preview every single race that's coming up this weekend in the world of auto racing. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back on the Racing Report. Welcome back to the Racing Report. My name is Rob Peeters, and now we're going to finish up the show today talking about everything that's coming up in the world of racing. The NASCAR Cup and Xfinity Series race this weekend at the Las Vegas Motor Speedway. It is the start of the round of 8 for both series. They will both be racing that first round, so it'll be important for a lot of these guys, again, to get stage points, get those stage points, get out front, and get out there and start doing well. And then the Truck Series is still off until Homestead, so they don't come back until next week. But then the Truck Series will race back-to-back at Homestead and Martinsville before determining their champion at Phoenix. Formula One returns this weekend with the United States Grand Prix, and the points battle is still pretty tight. So Max Verstappen has a 52-point lead over Lando Norris right now. And that's actually selling tickets. We talked about it last week. That's selling tickets right now. He's got an 86-point lead over Charles Leclerc. Depending on what happens, because again, Red Bull has been a lot slower. Red Bull has been a lot slower since really we came back from the summer break. And even before that, Red Bull has been slower consistently, and Verstappen is not winning as much. And I think if Lando Norris gets a win and Verstappen is not on the podium, I think it's going to be really important to watch the next couple of rounds here, because the Vegas round and the Mexico City round and the Brazilian round, all of those, they're going to be real, real tight, because the points championship might not seem, you might think, 52 points, that's nothing, right? That's in Formula One, that's a whole race. You race one, you still have a whole other race worth of gap to go. Maybe not when one guy's winning so much and the other guy isn't. It's a very close and rapidly changing championship. So be sure to watch that. That's coming up this weekend on Sunday. And then the next Supercars race is coming up, the Gold Coast 500 in 2 weeks' time at October 26th and 27th. Will Brown still has a 204-point lead over Brock Feeney in the championship. So maybe the championship's probably not going to come down to the wire. I would imagine Will Brown's going to win. But hey, if you're Red Bull, Team Ample Racing, I think that's a good deal to have both your drivers 1-2 in the championship, and one of them practically have it locked up with only a handful of races left. And then the final Super Formula race where will Shosu Boy steal the championship? We'll find out. That is coming up next month at Suzuka on November 9th through 10th. So that'll be the next race there. So again, so now we got IMSA's on the off season, we've got IndyCar on the off season, Formula E still on the off season, still a handful of races that are coming back in a couple of months' time. But for right now, we're really narrowing down the championship for a handful of these racing series. So don't miss a single episode of the Racing Report. You can find us on WTHR's YouTube channel, on all Tegna stations, on their OTT streams. And you can follow me on social media at rpeeters33, RPEETERS33. And I will post whenever we have a brand new episode out for your viewing pleasure. So again, thank you guys so much for watching this show and participating. We really appreciate it. And we will see you guys next week. Enjoy the racing weekend. It's going to be a fun, packed weekend of racing. We got NASCAR. We've got Formula One. It's always fun when those two are both in town because you'll have differing opinions between the fans. Hopefully not, right? Hopefully not. Hopefully it'll stay civil. Anyway, thank you guys so much. I'm Rob Peeters, and I will see you guys next week on The Racing Report.